My aunt ran a daycare that became a crime scene, but she tried to blame me when the police came. I didn't say a word until they opened the camera bag. Since my ex-boyfriend, I knew a PDF file from a mile away. After my ex's brother was diagnosed with cancer, his family had to save money, so they cut the electricity house. So that meant zero Wi-Fi. He and I basically lived next door from each other, so every night he'd flash a flashlight and would talk to me using Morse code. Never in a million years would I think that would ever be useful to me. But when I started working at my aunt's daycare, Morse code became the most useful skill I know. My aunt's daycare specialized in special needs children, and she held this honor of being the Mother Teresa in our town. When I needed a job after college, she hired me immediately. The first few weeks were normal. Diaper changes, juice spills, sticky fingers. One Tuesday during a reading of The Very Hungry Caterpillar, I was cleaning up the area when I heard her tapping. It was Morse code. My whole body went cold. She was tapping the R-word slur over and over. I stared at her. She thought she was the only one in the area to understand Morse code. After that, I couldn't unhear it. During Despicable Me, she tapped stupid whenever she looked at Jaden, who had Down syndrome. During Finding Nemo, she tapped waste of space while smiling at Maria, who was nonverbal. These were 3-year-olds, babies who trusted her. I tried to rationalize it in my head. After all, she was a daycare owner for babies, and she charged the parents 40% less than other daycares. So figured that maybe the stress was just getting to her or something. But as the weeks passed, I noticed something that made my stomach churn. She started tapping things like after nap time, while pointing at specific children and staring at my coworkers. Then those same kids would come back from special learning time, withdrawn and scared. Well, it didn't take long for me to take action. After I saw her tap out, "Take the quiet one today," I left 2 minutes after they did. As soon as they were in the room, I practically barged the door open and exclaimed my presence. "Hey guys, what are we all up to?" I yelled, trying to pretend I was just in a cheery mood. But I guess they heard me coming, because I only managed to catch one thing: the unmistakable look of relief on the child's face when she saw me walk in. My coworker smiled and hugged me before asking me to join in on their reading session. TBH, she put on such a convincing act that I started to believe that I was imagining things. Until the next morning, because that's when I woke up to a text from my aunt. She cut my hours down by 75%, and I was only rostered in to work with her. Up until this point, I was probably their best worker. Every child would hug me without even knowing my name, and parents would even send me gifts to thank me for making their children so happy. That's when I knew something fishy was going on. So for weeks, I tried to act as dumb as possible. I even dyed my hair blonde to feed into the stereotype. The plan was for them to stop feeling like they needed to hide things from me. Then came the day that changed everything. Margaret was reading The Cat in the Hat when she started tapping picture day tomorrow. But when I checked our calendar, there was no picture day scheduled. The next morning, a man I'd never seen before arrived with a camera bag. Margaret introduced him as Mr. Roll, a children's photographer. She tapped ready on her coffee mug. That's when little Emma, one of our nonverbal kids, started crying hysterically. Not normal crying. Terror. Pure terror. She grabbed onto my leg and wouldn't let go. "She's just camera shy," Margaret said sweetly, but her fingers tapped. Problem. I played dumb. "Oh, I can take her to the reading corner. We'll look at books while you take photos." I then scooped Emma up, still pretending to be bubbly and clueless. Margaret's fingers drummed while directioning towards Mr. Roll. "Take the brat." Through the window, I watched Mr. Roll took a few kids into the back room for individual portraits. After an hour, Mr. Roll took a bathroom break and left his camera bag by the reading corner. Margaret was busy with a parent who'd arrived early for pickup. This was my chance. I whispered to Emma that I'd be right back and casually walked over to tie my shoe next to the bag. My hands shook as I quickly grabbed the camera and ducked behind the bookshelf. What I saw made me want to throw up. The photos weren't portraits. They were wrong. Children completely unclothed. Some of them having their innocence stolen. Videos with timestamps going back months. I recognized some kids who'd moved away, who'd been withdrawn suddenly by their parents for family reasons. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the camera, but I managed to scroll through and take photos of the evidence with my phone. Dozens of them. My fingers trembled as I dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice crackled through my phone speaker. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to steady my breathing while Emma clutched my shirt. The camera sat heavy in my lap, its weight a reminder of what I just discovered. I heard footsteps approaching the reading corner. My heart hammered as I quickly slipped the camera back toward Mr. Roll's bag, pushing it with my foot while keeping Emma distracted with a picture book. The bathroom door clicked open down the hall. Margaret appeared around the bookshelf, her fingers already moving. "Where is it?" She tapped against her thigh, eyes scanning the area. I pointed to the camera bag while making silly faces at Emma, who buried her face in my shoulder. Mr. Roll emerged from the bathroom, straightening his shirt. He walked directly to his equipment, checking the camera briefly before nodding to Margaret. She relaxed slightly but kept watching me with those calculating eyes. The dispatcher whispered instructions about preserving evidence, about keeping calm. I muted my phone and slipped it into my pocket, praying the recording would continue. Emma's small body trembled against mine. Margaret's complexion shifted when she noticed how pale I'd become. She tilted her head, studying me like a specimen. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately. "Feeling sick?" I forced a bright smile and bounced Emma gently. "Just tired. Someone kept me up watching Disney movies last night." I tickled Emma's side, earning a small giggle that sounded more like a whimper. Mr. Roll checked his watch and glanced at Margaret. "We should continue. I have 3 more sessions today." He gestured toward the back room where several children were playing with blocks. My stomach lurched. I couldn't let him take another child back there. "Oh, actually, it's almost snack time," I announced loudly, checking the clock on the wall. "Should we get everyone together for crackers and juice first?" Margaret's jaw tightened. Her fingers drummed, "Stop stalling," against her leg, but she maintained her sweet smile. "The schedule says snack time isn't for another hour, dear." "But the kids seem hungry," I insisted, still bouncing Emma, who refused to loosen her grip on me. "And you know how cranky they get when their routine changes. Maybe just a quick snack?" Mr. Roll shifted his weight, clearly irritated by the delay. He reached for his camera bag, and I noticed his hands weren't quite steady either. Did he sense something was wrong? Margaret's fingers moved faster now. "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up!" The repetitive tapping made my skin crawl. She was losing patience with my interference. I pretended not to notice the Morse code, instead focusing on Emma. "Look, sweetie, should we get some goldfish crackers?" Emma nodded frantically against my shoulder, her whole body tense. The front door chimed as my coworker Vicky returned from her coffee run. She breezed in with her usual energy, completely unaware of the nightmare she'd walked into. "Sorry that took so long. The line was crazy and, oh, hello." She smiled at Mr. Roll. "I didn't know we had a photographer today." Margaret's expression smoothed into her practiced warmth. "Just some special portraits for the parents. Nothing formal." Her fingers stilled, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of movement. My heart leaped. 2 police cars had pulled up outside. No sirens, no lights. They were being careful, just like the dispatcher had instructed. Help was here, but they needed time to assess the situation. I kept my face neutral, continuing to comfort Emma while watching Margaret from the corner of my eye. She hadn't noticed the police yet, too focused on managing the situation inside. Mr. Roll began packing his camera more urgently. "Actually, I should probably head out. We got some good shots shots already. He zipped his bag with quick, practiced movements. Nonsense, Margaret said, but her voice had an edge. We haven't photographed half the children yet. The parents will be disappointed. That's when she saw them. Her gaze had drifted to the window, and her entire body went rigid. Her fingers exploded into frantic movement. Problem. Mr. Roll followed her gaze and cursed under his breath. He grabbed his equipment bag and started toward the back exit, but I knew the dispatcher would have told the officers about all the exits. They'd be covered. I stood up slowly, still holding Emma. Is everything okay? I asked innocently, though my legs felt like jelly. Vicky finally noticed the tension in the room. What's going on? Why are there police cars outside? Margaret's transformation was instant. Her panic melted into concern, and she moved toward the window with measured steps. Oh my, I hope everything's all right. Maybe there was an accident nearby. The front door opened with a gentle chime. 2 officers entered, their expressions carefully neutral. They didn't want to frighten the children, I realized. They were being so careful. Good morning, the first officer said pleasantly. We received a call about this location. We just need to ask a few questions. Margaret became the perfect picture of a concerned citizen. Of course, officers. How can we help? Would you like some coffee? I just made a fresh pot. Her fingers had gone completely still. Mr. Roll tried to edge toward the back door, camera bag in hand. I was just leaving. Don't want to be in the way. Actually, sir, we'd appreciate if everyone could stay for a few minutes, the second officer said. His tone was friendly but firm. Just while we sort this out. My coworker looked between all of us, confusion clear on her face. What's happening? Did something happen to one of the kids? Margaret jumped on that. The officers haven't said, dear. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. She moved closer to me, and I instinctively tightened my hold on Emma. Though our new helper here has been acting rather strange lately. Haven't you, sweetie? The accusation in her voice was clear. She was already trying to flip the narrative, to make me the problem. My mouth went dry. Strange how? The first officer asked, his attention shifting to me. Margaret's smile was sympathetic, almost pitying. She's been paranoid, making wild accusations. I was actually planning to talk to her about it today. We've been worried about her mental health. Mr. Roll nodded eagerly. She did seem unstable when I arrived, very agitated, made the children nervous. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Emma saved me. She lifted her head from my shoulder and pointed directly at Mr. Roll, then buried her face again, whimpering. The officers noticed. What's in the bag, sir? The second officer asked. Just my camera equipment. I'm a children's photographer. Mr. Roll's voice was steady, but sweat beaded on his forehead. I caught the first officer's eye and glanced meaningfully at the bag, then back at him. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. Mind if we take a look? He asked Mr. Roll. Just routine. Margaret stepped forward. Do you have a warrant? This is a private business, and Mr. Roll is a contracted professional. This is harassment. We're just asking, ma'am. He's free to say no. The officer's tone remained pleasant, but his partner had positioned himself between Mr. Roll and the back exit. The room felt electric with tension. The other children had gone quiet, sensing the adult's unease. Emma trembled in my arms, and I rubbed her back gently. Mr. Roll clutched his bag tighter. I really do need to go. I have other appointments. In a minute, sir. The first officer turned to me. Miss, are you the one who called? Before I could answer, Margaret's fingers started moving against her skirt. Not Morse code this time, just nervous energy. She was trapped, and she knew it. I nodded slowly, keeping Emma close. The officer's eyes softened as he took in the terrified child clinging to me. Margaret's fingers resumed their frantic tapping against her leg, this time spelling out, deny everything, over and over. The first officer approached Mr. Roll calmly. Mr. Roll's grip on the camera bag tightened until his knuckles went white. Sweat dripped down his temple as he backed toward the wall. The second officer moved to block any escape route while maintaining a non-threatening stance. Margaret suddenly stepped between them, her voice taking on an authoritative tone. She explained that Mr. Roll was a respected professional who'd been photographing children for years. Her fingers never stopped moving, now tapping, get rid of it, while gesturing subtly toward the bag. Vicky stood frozen by the coffee maker, her usual cheerfulness replaced by growing alarm. She kept glancing between Margaret and the officers, trying to piece together what was happening. The children in the main room had gone completely silent, their toys forgotten as they watched the adults with wide eyes. Mr. Roll finally set his bag on the floor, but kept one hand on it protectively. The officer asked permission to examine the contents. Mr. Roll's face went through several expressions before he nodded stiffly. As the officer reached for the bag, Margaret's tapping became almost violent against her thigh. The officer carefully opened the camera bag and began removing equipment. Camera bodies, lenses, memory cards, and plastic cases. Each item was handled with care, documented. Mr. Roll's breathing became shallow as the officer found a hidden compartment in the bag's lining. Inside were dozens of memory cards, each labeled with dates going back years. The officer's expression remained neutral, but I saw his jaw tighten. He placed the cards in evidence bags while his partner began reading Mr. Roll his rights. Margaret immediately launched into a performance. She expressed shock, confusion, insisting she'd had no idea about any wrongdoing. Her fingers, however, told a different story, tapping out blame her while pointing at me with her other hand. She told the officers I'd been making baseless accusations for weeks, that I'd probably planted whatever they'd found. She even suggested I might have been trying to frame Mr. Roll because he'd rejected my advances. The lies flowed so smoothly, I almost believed them myself. Emma whimpered and pressed her face harder into my shoulder when Mr. Roll was handcuffed. Other children began crying, sensing the fear in the room. Vicky finally moved, instinctively going to comfort the nearest child, but her hands shook as she picked up a little boy. The second officer asked me to step outside with Emma to give a statement. Margaret's fingers flew across her leg. Lying little witch. Her face, however, remained a mask of concern as she told the officer she hoped I'd get the help I clearly needed. Outside, I held Emma while explaining everything to the officer. The Morse code, the strange, special learning times, the way children came back different. Emma clung to me throughout, occasionally lifting her head to make sure Mr. Roll wasn't nearby. Through the window, I watched Margaret inside, still playing the innocent victim. She gestured animatedly, no doubt spinning tales about my supposed instability, but her fingers never stopped their nervous tapping, though she probably didn't realize the officers were recording everything. More police arrived, along with social workers. Parents were called to pick up their children early. Each family was met by a social worker, who gently explained that there was an ongoing investigation, that their children would need to be interviewed by specialists. The first parent to arrive was Jaden's mother. Her face went from confusion to horror as the situation was explained. She scooped up her son, holding him like she'd never let go. Jaden, usually so cheerful, was subdued and clingy. Maria's parents arrived next. Maria, still nonverbal, communicated her distress through gestures and whimpers. Her mother's eyes filled with tears as she noticed her daughter's fearful reaction to the police photographing the back room where Mr. Roll had taken children. Margaret tried to intercept each parent, assuring them this was all a misunderstanding. Her fingers tapped out increasingly desperate messages. Sue them all, call lawyer, destroy everything. But the parents weren't listening anymore. They saw their children's reactions, the police presence, the evidence bags being carried out. Vicky approached me during the chaos, her face pale. She admitted Margaret had always sent her on errands during certain times, always with specific children. She'd thought it was for specialized therapy sessions, actions. The realization of what she'd unknowingly enabled hit her hard. As more evidence was collected from the daycare, Margaret's story began to crumble. Officers found hidden cameras in the back room, computer equipment with encrypted files, and records of payments that didn't match the official books. Her fingers went still for the first time as the weight of evidence mounted. The detective in charge asked me about the Morse code. I demonstrated how Margaret had been tapping, translating the messages I'd witnessed. They brought in an expert who confirmed that the patterns matched standard Morse code. Video footage from the daycare's security cameras would later verify my translations. Emma finally loosened her grip on me when her foster parents arrived. She'd been in the system before coming to the daycare, which made her vulnerability even more heartbreaking. Her foster mother's face crumpled when she saw Emma's terror. They'd trusted this place to help their traumatized child, not add to her pain. Margaret was read her rights as parents continued arriving. Her transformation was complete now, from beloved community figure to suspected predator. She demanded a lawyer, insisted on her innocence, but her hands shook as they cuffed her. No more Morse code messages, just trembling fingers. Mr. Roll had already been taken away, but investigators found his van in the parking lot. Inside were more cameras, costumes, and props that made my stomach turn. The scope of what had been happening became clearer with each discovery. Parents huddled together in the parking lot, sharing stories they'd dismissed before. Strange behaviors, regression in potty training, nightmares about picture time. Things that had seemed like normal childhood phases suddenly took on sinister meanings. The daycare was sealed as a crime scene. Yellow tape crossed the entrance where parents had once dropped off their precious children with complete trust. The sign reading Little Angels Daycare seemed like a cruel joke now. I gave my full statement at the police station, Emma's foster parents kindly staying with me for support. I explained how I discovered the Morse code, how I played dumb to gather evidence, how I finally called 911 when I saw those horrific images. The detective revealed that my call had triggered a larger investigation. Mr. Roll was already known to authorities in another state, but had slipped through the cracks. Margaret's financial records showed large deposits that didn't match her reported income. The daycare had been a front for something much darker. Other employees were brought in for questioning. Most seemed genuinely shocked, but a few exhibited nervous behaviors that warranted closer scrutiny. The web of deception was extensive, but most staff had been kept in the dark, manipulated just like the parents. Vicky broke down during her interview, realizing how many times she'd been sent away during special sessions. She provided a detailed timeline of when Margaret had sent her on errands, which children had been present, and how long she'd been gone. Her information proved invaluable. Child psychologists were brought in to gently interview the victims. Emma and several other children showed clear signs of trauma. Their play therapy sessions revealed disturbing patterns, fear of cameras, anxiety around certain adults, and regression in developmental milestones. Margaret's home was searched that evening. Officers found more evidence, printed emails, financial records, and disturbingly trophies from her victims. Children's clothing, toys, items that parents had reported missing over the months. She'd been keeping souvenirs. The prosecutor built a strong case. My Morse code evidence was unique. It showed premeditation, enjoyment of the abuse, and coordination with Mr. Roll. The messages I documented revealed a woman who took pleasure in hurting the most vulnerable children. Margaret's lawyer tried to discredit me, suggesting I'd misinterpreted innocent tapping, but the video evidence was clear. Experts confirmed that her finger movements were deliberate Morse code, matching exactly what I'd reported. Her own arrogance in thinking only she knew Morse code had been her downfall. The investigation revealed that Margaret had specifically targeted special needs children. They were less likely to report abuse, their behavioral changes often attributed to their conditions. Parents desperate for affordable care were less likely to question practices. It was calculated, predatory selection. Mr. Roll's history came to light. Multiple aliases, moves across state lines, always working with children. He'd found in Margaret a willing partner who provided access and cover. Their partnership had lasted years, destroying innocence for profit and perverse pleasure. More victims came forward as news spread. Former employees remembered strange incidents. Parents whose children had been withdrawn suddenly shared their suspicions. The pattern went back almost a decade, hidden behind Margaret's sterling reputation. The community reeled from the revelation. Margaret had been trusted, celebrated even. She'd received awards for her work with special needs children. Those same awards now seemed like mockery, props, and an elaborate deception. I struggled with guilt over not acting sooner. Every child who'd suffered while I played dumb weighed on me, but the detective assured me that my careful evidence gathering had made the difference between suspicion and conviction. Emma's foster parents told me she'd started having severe nightmares. Other parents reported similar issues. Children who'd been potty trained having accidents, fear of being photographed, anxiety around daycare settings. The trauma rippled through families. Margaret's bail hearing revealed the extent of her assets, properties in multiple states, offshore accounts, investments, all funded by exploiting children. The judge denied bail, citing flight risk and danger to the community. She'd remain in custody until trial. The daycare building stood empty, a monument to shattered trust. Parents drove past with their children, trying to explain why they couldn't go back. The place that had promised nurturing care had delivered nightmare fuel instead. Support groups formed for affected families. Parents shared resources for therapy, compared notes on their children's recovery. The community that Margaret had betrayed began healing together, united by shared trauma and determination to protect their children. My role as whistleblower became public during pre-trial hearings. Some praised my courage, others questioned why I'd waited. I received both thank you cards from grateful parents and anonymous hate mail from Margaret's remaining supporters who couldn't accept the truth. The prosecutor prepared me for trial testimony. I'd need to demonstrate the Morse code, explain how I'd recognized it, detail every message I'd witnessed. My ex-boyfriend's strange communication method had become the key to justice. Child advocacy groups reached out, wanting to use my story for training. The Morse code aspect was unique. It showed how abusers could communicate openly while believing they were hidden. It became a cautionary tale about staying vigilant for unusual patterns. Margaret's defense team tried various strategies. They claimed the Morse code was coincidental movement, that I'd projected meaning onto innocent gestures. They suggested I had a vendetta against my aunt. Each attempt fell flat against the mountain of evidence. Families filed civil suits against Margaret, the daycare, and associated parties. The financial exploitation added another layer. Parents had paid for care while their children were being abused and photographed. The betrayal was complete, touching every aspect of trust. The investigation expanded as digital forensics uncovered connections to other predators. Margaret and Mr. Roll had been part of a network, sharing content and victims. What started as one daycare secret became a multi-state investigation. I met with other witnesses as trial approached. Former employees who'd seen things but hadn't understood. Parents who'd noticed changes but accepted explanations. We were all pieces of a puzzle that showed systematic, calculated abuse hidden behind smiles and reputation. Margaret's communications from jail were monitored. She tried to coordinate with outside allies, destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses. Each attempt added obstruction charges to her growing list. Her need for control persisted even behind bars. The children slowly began healing with therapy. Emma started speaking a few words. Jaden's sunny disposition disposition gradually returned. Maria began trusting adults again. Small victories in the shadow of enormous trauma, but progress nonetheless. I returned to the empty daycare one evening, standing outside the fence. The playground where children had laughed now seemed sinister. Every corner held potential secrets. The building that had once represented opportunity now embodied betrayal. Local news covered the case extensively. Margaret's fall from grace was complete, from Mother Teresa to monster. The community struggled to reconcile the woman they'd known with the evidence against her. Many simply couldn't, clinging to denial. Trial preparation intensified. The prosecutor walked me through my testimony repeatedly. I practiced demonstrating Morse code, explaining how I'd learned it, why I'd recognized Margaret's tapping. My strange teenage communication method had become crucial evidence. Other daycares in town reported increased scrutiny from parents. Trust had been shattered community-wide. Background checks, surprise visits, constant vigilance became the new normal. Margaret's crimes had changed how everyone viewed childcare. The prosecutor revealed they'd found Margaret's journals during the home search. Written in code, they detailed her activities, her enjoyment, her plans. Cryptographers worked to decode them, finding more evidence of premeditation and additional victims. Mr. Roll agreed to testify against Margaret in exchange for a plea deal. His testimony would reveal how they'd met, how they'd operated, who else was involved. The network was larger than anyone had imagined, spreading across state lines. I prepared for the emotional toll of trial testimony. Facing Margaret in court, detailing her abuse, demonstrating the Morse code that had exposed her, it would all be public, permanent record. But those children deserved justice, and I could help deliver it. The community rallied around affected families as trial approached. Fundraisers for therapy, volunteer counselors, support groups. People channeled their horror into action. Margaret had broken trust, but she hadn't broken compassion. Final preparations included security measures. Margaret still had supporters who refused to believe the evidence. Threats had been made against witnesses. The prosecutor assured me that safety measures were in place, but fear lingered. As the trial date neared, I thought about those children. Emma's terror, Jaden's confusion, Maria's silence. They'd trusted the adults in their lives to protect them. Margaret had exploited that trust, but now the system would work to restore it. The evidence was overwhelming. Physical evidence, digital records, witness testimony, and my Morse code translations. Margaret's own arrogance in believing her code was secret had created a detailed record of her crimes. Justice was coming. I visited my old neighborhood, standing outside the house where my ex-boyfriend had lived. Those late-night Morse code conversations had seemed pointless then, just a way to communicate without Wi-Fi. Now they'd helped save children from ongoing abuse. The prosecutor expressed confidence as trial approached. The case was strong, the evidence clear. Margaret's attempts to manipulate from jail had only strengthened the prosecution. Her need to control everything had created more evidence against her. The trial date arrived faster than expected. I sat in the witness waiting room, my hands steady despite the churning in my stomach. Emma's foster mother had sent me a drawing Emma made, stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. I tucked it into my pocket for courage. The prosecutor reviewed my testimony one final time. I'd demonstrate the Morse code, translate Margaret's messages, explain how I'd recognize the pattern. The defense would attack my credibility, but the evidence supported every word. Margaret entered the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, her appearance drastically different from the caring daycare owner persona. Her fingers drummed against the defense table, not Morse code, just nervous energy. She avoided eye contact with everyone. I took the stand and began my testimony. The prosecutor guided me through discovering the Morse code, documenting the messages, finding the camera. I demonstrated the tapping patterns, translating each horrible message Margaret had sent while smiling at children. The defense attorney challenged everything. He suggested I'd imagined patterns and random movements, that stress had made me paranoid. I calmly showed the jury video footage where Margaret's tapping perfectly matched Morse code sequences. Her own security cameras had captured her crimes. Mr. Roll testified next, revealing their operation in clinical detail. He'd met Margaret at a conference 5 years ago. She'd approached him with the daycare opportunity, promising access to vulnerable children whose parents couldn't afford better care. Their partnership had been purely transactional, exploitation for profit. Parents testified about changes in their children. Jaden's mother described his nightmares, his fear of cameras. Maria's parents showed drawings she'd made in therapy, dark scribbles with crying faces. Each testimony built the case against Margaret. The forensic computer analyst presented digital evidence, thousands of images, videos spanning years, financial records showing payments from buyers. Margaret had run a sophisticated operation, using her reputation as cover while destroying innocence. Margaret's defense crumbled under the weight of evidence. Her lawyer argued she'd been manipulated by Mr. Roll, but her Morse code messages showed enthusiasm, planning, enjoyment. She'd been the architect, not a victim. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts, child exploitation, conspiracy, racketeering. Margaret stood motionless as the verdict was read, her fingers finally still. No more messages to tap, no children left to hurt. Sentencing came 2 months later. I attended with several parents, united in our need to see justice completed. The judge reviewed the evidence, the impact statements, the scope of Margaret's crimes. Life without parole. Margaret would never touch another child. The daycare building was demolished 6 months later. Parents and community members gathered to watch. Where Margaret had hurt children, a small memorial garden would grow. Emma's foster parents brought her to plant flowers. She spoke my name clearly for the first time that day. I returned to college to finish my early childhood education degree. The experience had clarified my purpose, protecting children, recognizing signs others might miss. My professors incorporated my experience into their curriculum, teaching future educators about predator tactics. Local daycares implemented new safeguards. Background checks became more thorough. Surprise inspections increased. Parent involvement expanded. Margaret's crimes had exposed vulnerabilities in the system. Changes came slowly but steadily. Emma continued therapy and made remarkable progress. Her foster parents adopted her officially, providing the stable home she deserved. She sent me pictures sometimes, smiling at the beach, playing with a puppy, being a normal child. Jaden returned to his sunny disposition gradually. His mother told me he'd started kindergarten successfully, making friends and thriving. The shadows from the daycare faded as new, positive experiences accumulated. Maria found her voice through art therapy. Her parents shared her paintings with me, bright colors replacing the dark scribbles, hope emerging from trauma. She'd probably never speak traditionally, but she communicated joy again. Other victims' families stayed in touch through a private support group. We shared resources, celebrated milestones, mourned setbacks together. Margaret had brought us together through horror, but we'd formed genuine connections through healing. Vicky opened her own home daycare with rigorous safety protocols. She'd learned hard lessons about vigilance and trust. Parents appreciated her transparency, her dedication to child safety. She'd transformed guilt into purpose. The memorial garden bloomed that first spring. Families gathered for a small ceremony, planting more flowers, sharing stories of recovery. Children played on new equipment funded by Margaret's seized assets, something positive from so much negative. I completed my degree and found work at a therapeutic preschool. My experience helped me recognize trauma responses, support struggling children. Every child saved from suffering validated the pain of exposing Margaret. My ex-boyfriend reached out after seeing news coverage of the trial. He expressed amazement that our silly teenage communication method had helped save children. We met for coffee, reminiscing about simpler times before life got complicated. The therapeutic preschool specialized in trauma recovery. I worked with children from difficult backgrounds, using play therapy and patience to rebuild trust. Some reminded me of Emma, withdrawn, fearful, needing someone to notice their pain. Parents at the preschool appreciated my vigilance without knowing my history. I learned to balance appropriate concern with avoiding paranoia. Trust but verify became my professional motto. Emma started first grade that fall. Her adoptive parents sent photos of her backpack, her nervous excitement. She'd chosen a rainbow design, the same image from her first drawing to me. Progress measured in small victories. The support group evolved beyond trauma recovery. Families celebrated birthdays together, shared holiday traditions, created new memories. Margaret had tried to destroy innocence. We rebuilt it through community. I developed training materials for daycare workers about recognizing abuse signs. The Morse code aspect made my story memorable, but the broader lessons about trusting instincts and protecting vulnerable children resonated more. Local law enforcement invited me to speak at training sessions. Officers learned about predator communication methods, grooming tactics, how abusers hide in plain sight. My testimony helped them approach similar cases with better understanding. 1 year after the trial, I received a letter from Margaret through her lawyer. She wanted forgiveness, claimed transformation through faith. I destroyed the letter without responding. Some bridges should stay burned. The Memorial Garden hosted its first community event, a butterfly release symbolizing transformation. Children who'd attended Margaret's daycare released monarchs with their families, beautiful creatures emerging from cocoons, flying free. I pursued additional certifications in trauma-informed care. Understanding how abuse affects developing minds helped me support struggling children better. Knowledge became power to prevent future Margaret situations. Emma's adoptive mother asked me to be her daughter's godmother. I accepted tearfully, honored by their trust. Emma had grown confident, chatty even. She loved school, made friends easily, showed no lasting visible trauma. My work at the therapeutic preschool expanded to training new teachers. I emphasized observation skills, trusting instincts, creating safe environments. Every educator who learned these lessons multiplied child protection exponentially. The second anniversary of Margaret's arrest passed quietly. Media had moved on to other stories. Families continued healing privately. Justice had been served. Now came the harder work of living beyond trauma. I started dating a fellow teacher who understood my dedication to child safety without knowing the full story. He appreciated my vigilance without finding it excessive. Healthy relationships were possible after witnessing such darkness. Emma performed in her school's winter concert, singing loudly with her classmates. Her parents recorded everything, tears streaming. 2 years earlier, she'd been nonverbal, terrified. Now she commanded attention through joy. The therapeutic preschool expanded, serving more trauma-affected children. Funding came partially from civil settlements against Margaret's estate. Her crimes inadvertently created resources for healing. Ironic justice. I completed advanced training in play therapy techniques. Children communicated through toys what words couldn't express. Understanding their language helped identify problems early, preventing escalation. Spring brought new growth to the Memorial Garden and the community. Families gathered for picnics where the daycare once stood. Children played freely while parents watched without the hypervigilance of early recovery. My relationship deepened with the fellow teacher. He learned my history gradually, responding with support rather than skepticism. We discussed opening our own therapeutic center someday, dreams built on lessons learned. Emma's third grade teacher called her adoptive parents with concerns, not problems. Emma had become protective of a shy classmate, recognizing signs of distress. Her trauma had transformed into empathy, helping another vulnerable child. I received an award from a child advocacy organization for my role in exposing Margaret. The recognition felt hollow compared to seeing recovered children thriving. True reward came from Emma's laughter, Jaden's confidence, Maria's artistic expression. The Memorial Garden needed expansion, as more families wanted to participate. We added benches, a small playground, spaces for reflection and play, beauty growing from ashes, hope from horror. Training requests increased from daycares nationwide. I traveled occasionally, sharing lessons learned, emphasizing vigilance without paranoia. Each session potentially prevented another Margaret situation. My boyfriend proposed at the Memorial Garden during the butterfly release. Surrounded by families who'd become extended family, I said yes. Love had grown in unlikely soil, nurtured by shared purpose. Emma served as flower girl at our small wedding. She walked confidently, scattering petals, beaming. Her adoptive parents cried happy tears. The terrified child I'd protected had become a joyful participant in celebration. We honeymooned briefly before returning to work with traumatized children. Our therapeutic center plan solidified, a place where hurt children could heal, where vigilant adults would protect them. The fourth anniversary arrived with less pain, more purpose. The Memorial Garden hosted art therapy sessions, support groups, children's activities. Margaret's daycare had become a healing space through community determination. I discovered I was pregnant during a particularly difficult week at work. New life growing while helping damaged children heal felt profound. My child would grow up understanding the importance of protecting the vulnerable. Emma wrote me a letter for my baby shower. In careful cursive, she expressed excitement about meeting the baby, promised to be a good example. Her words showed remarkable growth from the terrified child who'd clung to me. Our daughter arrived during spring, when the Memorial Garden bloomed brightest. We named her Hope. Cheesy perhaps, but appropriate. She'd grow up surrounded by families who'd chosen healing over bitterness. The therapeutic center opened when Hope turned 6 months old. We served children from difficult backgrounds, providing affordable care with extensive safeguards. Every lesson from Margaret's crimes informed our practices. Emma volunteered at the center during high school, reading to younger children. She'd chosen to study social work, wanting to help vulnerable kids. Her full circle journey inspired everyone who knew her story. Years passed, children healed, families rebuilt, communities strengthened. Margaret died in prison, a footnote in newspapers, unmourned by victims. Her legacy became the safeguards, awareness, and healing that emerged from exposing her. I continued working with traumatized children, raising my own daughter, building a life defined by purpose rather than pain. The Morse code skills that exposed Margaret became a quirky story I'd tell occasionally, emphasizing how unexpected knowledge can save lives.